All right. Good morning, folks, and welcome to the On Deck Show, a show that takes a look at people and organizations doing things in their own way, outside the scope of normal, to make things better for you and I. Today, we're talking with the master of community, the master of tribe, Richard Patey from Healthy Results Training. Richard has built a community of athletes and fitness enthusiasts across the world over the past 30 plus years. He brings his functional and practical approach to fitness training and coaching to the clients that he serves every day. He's also a very well-accomplished triathlete and a long-standing member of the triathlon community. We're fortunate to talk to Richard today, and we welcome him here to the On Deck Show. All right, so there we go, Richard. Thank you again for being here and making time, and this crazy time we're all dealing with at the moment.
I just wish I could wake up every morning with that kind of intro. It sounds so much better.
This is your own personal alarm clock. Like, this is who I am.
Yeah, you are awesome.
Well, I mean, like when I put that together, it was, in all honesty, from what I know about you and what I know, the level of respect that you hold in the triathlon community, and how people talk about you. So, I mean, that's all earned. So that's on you.
Thank you.
So I want to start with a question on Healthy Results, and then I want to kind of go backwards and kind of, sort of talk about your journey to this point. So to lead off, can you tell us about Healthy Results Training? What is it, and so on and so forth?
Yeah, so Healthy Results sort of came out from being the tail end of my professional career in 1998, and realizing I was going to make that transition to coaching. I'd already started coaching a bit, and so I registered Healthy Results, and I became a certified coach. And it was just a growth process of, I didn't know where I was going with it, but it became this element where we were training athletes predominantly for Ironman at the time, because there was a huge boom in 2000, 2002 to 2004, really, where everybody was just doing Ironman, because 70.3 racing didn't really exist yet. It was not like it is today. And so we built our business based on Ironman and growing and training basically to Healthy Results. And that is, we are about training the everyday person. And so we really focus in on, we have professional athletes that we work with, but we also work with top age groupers. We work with middle of the pack athletes, and we work with people just hoping to finish their event. And the great thing about it is every hour is different. My day, from 6 o'clock this morning until 9 o'clock tonight, every hour is going to be different. I'm talking about completely different things. One client I'm working with is high tech. We've got all the latest data gadgets, using every algorithm that we can work on to make their training better. And then the next step, we're just talking about how to be consistent and get 30 minutes in every day. So I love it, because it keeps my brain going, and it makes me feel that I'm really helping people at all different levels.
Yeah, fair enough. And that's true to what, like I said, we know about you from the community and so on and so forth. So triathlon started in the late 70s in California. Your first international triathlon was 89. So, relatively speaking, whether we're talking about triathlon in Canada, like you were there right at the beginning, relatively speaking. You're not that old. But
I'm old. I feel like I'm getting older. It's funny. I feel there is definitely a different group of athletes out there now than when I started. For sure, triathlon was very much at its beginning stages when I started. Sure, it had been around for about 9 years, but just becoming popular. I mean, in my small town growing up, I was the only person doing triathlon. And I was the only kid doing triathlon. And so I was definitely not, it was not the norm. Whereas, nowadays, well, even that same town, me and my mom used to host a race there when I got older, and we'd have 400 or 500 people in a race. And so the sport has really massively grown. It really has.
Yeah, fair enough. And I know you had a multi-sport background, so you were a skier, you were a runner. What drew you? Was it was it the fact that it was new? What got you into it?
Yeah. So the story is, so when I was 13, there was a half marathon that went down past my bottom of my street. And it was a little local YMCA half marathon. And I was asked my mom, like, what are all these runners doing down the road? And I was by no means, I was a downhill skier. I would cross country ski a tiny bit, but by no means athletically. And I was a sailor or windsurfer in the summer. Those were my sports at the time. But it weirdly, for some reason, I really, this intrigued me. These people were running. And then how far were they running? Well, they were running over, I lived in the town of Midland. So they were running over to the neighboring town, Penetang, and they were going to run around and back. And I was like, whoa, that's kind of cool. It's a journey. How old do you need to be? Well, turned out you had to be 14. I was like, okay, next year I'm doing it. And that was April of would have been 88. And so in April of 89 came around, my mom comes home from the Y one day and she says, that half marathon thing is on Saturday. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, how far is it? It's 21K. Well, how far is that? So we measured it out. And on Tuesday, I ran the front half of the course. On Thursday, I think it was, I ran the back half of the course. And then on Sunday, I just went out and ran a half marathon at 14 years of age. We knew nothing. There were no books. There were no learned runs. There was no anything to say to my mom, like, what are you doing with your son? We just thought that this, I wanted to do it. And my mom always was that huge support. You want to do it? I'll figure out a way for you to do it. And it went really well. Like, I didn't realize at the time, but looking back on it now, it was a little ridiculous how well I did. And I still cross country running after that, track and field. I wasn't a star by any stretch of the imagination. I had to work really hard to make OFSA, which is here in Ontario, our big track and field and cross country. I was never a shoe-in for those kind of events. And so it was really growing through running that then I got my first, at the race, I saw a brochure for a triathlon. And so in that June, my sister and I actually decided that we would do our first triathlon, which really, it turned out to be, I didn't know how to swim, which is funny now as a swim coach. And I literally did breaststroke for 1,500 meters. We did know how to ride 45K because we had that 2 full months of training. And so we rode this incredibly hilly out through Moonstone 45K bike ride. And then I thought it'd be a piece of cake, a 12K run. 2 months ago, I just ran 21K and I pretty much walked 12K of the triathlon, 3 hours and I want to say it's 15 minutes or something like that for an Olympic distance, a little bit over Olympic distance triathlon. It was a 45K bike and a 12K run. And you'd think I was like almost dead last. I think there was 3 people behind me and I was like, I'm hooked. When's the next one? And yeah, like later on, slightly shorter, they shortened that race to a 40K and a 10K. I did that race in 1 hour and 51 minutes. So it is, the journey has been interesting. A lot of hard work. And it was, people always ask me, how did you know? And I was like, I have no clue. It was just, I enjoyed every last bit of the challenge. Everything I've ever done as an athlete, I've signed up for it, not because what it could do for me, but the fact that it either scared me or that I wanted to see if I could do it. And that's sort of been my motto in everything, whether it be taking on some coaching or taking on healthy results or taking on my athletic career.
Yeah, that's a brilliant answer. And like how much of that when you're dealing with, athletes that are coming to you saying, I want to do this for the first time, or even as basic as I want to improve my fitness. How much of that story do you impart to them?
Well, I think a lot of my experiences and then the, 23 year experiences as a coach has taught me is that when I talk to a client for the first time, I listen to the client talk, give me their history a little bit, But without even hearing any stats, without hearing any of their actual athletic backgrounds, their personality will tell me whether they're going to be successful or not. And then if their personality is such that I know I need to do work on their mental aspect of their training, then I know that that's going to be our biggest hurdle. The thing I've learned, that the training part, the day-to-day, put in the time, put in the mileage, that's easy. That's actually truly the easiest part. But the mental game of it all, especially when we talk about Ironman, I explain to everyone, whether you are the first person or whether you are, dead last, everyone is suffering. And if you're not suffering, something's probably really wrong with you. You should probably quit after that race because you had the perfect day. But it is a huge challenge. And even down to a half Ironman, even down to an Olympic distance, even to a sprint, even we can talk about swimming, even in a 400, there's always that question of whether you can do it at that 3/4 distance. So 3/4 through the race, your brain will always want to tell you can't do it. So to me, it's always about training the athlete and working with the athletes to make sure that they're ready to handle that moment, because the rest of it's pretty straightforward.
That's interesting. I want to kind of double click on that for a second. So when you talk about personality, so there are probably a lot of things that you've learned over the years that can help people when we talk about personality and so on and so forth. So what are the things that you have seen from a personality standpoint that help and that hinder?
Well, I mean, the conversation we'll constantly have is an intrinsic motivation versus an external motivator. And you need to be motivated from within. If your goal is strictly how people view you, if your goal is strictly about needing that podium, you have to be on the podium. My whole goal is to be first, second, third in my age group, first, second, third, whatever. And, I'll quite often, in sort of the heyday of my racing, I won a lot of races. But I used to tell people, like, all those medals are in a box down in the basement somewhere. They don't mean anything to me, but certain performances mean a lot to me. So for me, when I cross that finish line, the place, okay, in the moment, I might be racing for a place, but the satisfaction of it, the happiness of it, that enjoyment of it is really based on how I felt I executed. So I think I really try to translate that to the client and say, you can use those external motivators, your competition around you, that person up the road that you're going to chase down. But at the end of the day, you've got to look back on yourself internally and be really proud of what you accomplished. Because if 3 amazing people show up, and, I grew up with a guy who went on to, my roommate and training partner for many years was, a gold medalist at the Olympics and a silver medalist at the Olympics. So, tell me how many times I came second. And so if I put all the if the whole priority was first all the time, I would have been disappointed a lot. I think it was 96, 97. I think I had like 15 second places. So it is truly a, you need to have goals that are more internal. And so that's what I really try to translate to the client, is that they need to, why are you doing this? And when I ask that question, why, you learn a lot about people and helping them understand how to make those goals so that they are happy and not depressed. I mean, we've heard this from athletes. They finish their big race and they have this depression afterwards because they're almost never satisfied. And making sure that people really end each event with satisfaction and some really positive things come out of each one.
Yeah, again, fantastic answer. So I want to kind of stick on that theme, and I want to talk about how you kind of walk the walk when it comes to that stuff, because in 2010, I believe you had a pretty severe accident, but you recovered and you worked yourself through it. And it sounds like a lot of the stuff that you just described, you also deployed or employed to recover through that. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so a little bit of back history on that. I retired as a professional in 2003, started my family. During that time, my daughter, when she was 2, she had cancer. So there was a real break in racing for me between 2004 and 2007, 2008. So in 2010, I was just sort of dabbling back into racing, and can't even think this minute how old I would have been. I would have been 36, and I was at Racing Welland and in third place, and in a great battle with some of my closest friends, it was actually the weekend of the G20 in Toronto. And because of that, I say that because the race course had to be changed last minute because there had been riots, and they pulled the cops from the race course to go from Niagara Falls over to Toronto to help out. And so the race organizer had to create a different race course very last minute. It was an out and back. The roads were still open. And when we were coming back, we'd already made the turnaround, but the vast majority of the athletes were still going out on the bike. And the car that was going opposite to me was trying to weave in and around athletes. And as he went around a group of athletes, he clipped me in my arm. So I was on that aero position. It clipped me on my arm and threw me into the ditch. My good friend, Nigel Gray, was in fourth. He stopped. He took care of me while we waited for paramedics to arrive. And I ended up suffering a really bad break in the humerus and a lot of road rash. I mean, really, I hit a car I was going 40 one direction. They were going 80 the other direction, and we had an impact. I'm lucky to be alive. And it was a 9-month recovery process. But that then got the wheels spinning of, okay, I think it got coined then. We were going to say fast at 40. So I made it a goal of trying to be back racing well by 2014 and try to make it to Kona. And so the process was 2011 was just trying to remember how to swim again, try to remember, just get back into some form of athletic shape. And then 2012, I raced the multi-sport series here in Ontario, and I ended up winning the race in a really close battle to what many listeners might know if they're following triathlon nowadays, Cody Beals. And he was just starting his career. He's now one of the top Ironman athletes in the world. We had a great friendship and great battle through that year. And then 2013, I qualified for Kona at Ironman Arizona, being one of the top age groupers there, and then went on to Kona to have a great race there in 2014, and then retired from triathlon after that. So it was a great journey back, and made it, again, that's sort of, again, how my brain works. As soon as I have some adversity, I always sit back and try to make a goal and find something, a personal challenge, and put it ahead. And so that's what happened.
Yeah, a common theme for sure. You touched on this earlier in your last response, but about your daughter, and one of the initiatives you took is you started I believe it was a race foundation or a race to help, and you raised quite a bit of money.
$250,000.
$250,000, and like that was over the course of a year or 2 years.
1 year.
In a year.
Yeah.
And so talk to me a little bit about that. I mean, share what you're willing to share. I don't want to pry, but
my daughter had a form of leukemia called ALL, and she was going through treatment for 5 years. And then at the end of that, near the end of that, I felt like I wanted to do something. I'll be fully honest. Part of me was also being a little on the selfish side, wanting to get back onto the road and figuring out how I could still support and do something with the platform that I had. And so in 2017, we created Race for Kids, where 100% of the donations went to a charity that helped families with childhood cancer. So it was the years leading into that were really rough for our family, very challenging, and it was a great motivator for me, because triathlon was the community that I knew, and the community stepped up. The race organizer of Lake Placid at the time, Graham Fraser, he gave us the spots, so we didn't have to fight for spots at the time because they were very hard to come by. Sorry, Bella's here barking. And so I think the biggest thing is that we're able to really kind of pull in more triathletes in the community and bring a lot of people together to raise money for childhood cancer.
Yeah, fantastic. That's incredible. Good on you for doing that, and I'm sure a lot of people were very grateful for that work. So looking at sort of where things are at today, I mean, you've talked about HR, healthy results, and so on and so forth. You've built a community there, and you work with people all across the world. You kind of describe that community a little bit, like who is the HR tribe?
That is well, Bella wants to be part of the HR tribe right now. The HR athlete is really quite diverse. Like I said before, we have trained people as young as 13, 14 years of age. I still currently have a client who's 90 years of age, and still heli skis every year. The clientele is predominantly, we're about 90% triathlon based, 10% other, whether that be running, cycling focused, or adventure. We're starting to, because of one of my new passions, ultra running, we are slowly moving into ultra running, although I'm just trying to decide whether I'll just keep that for myself. And the age bracket, I mean, our clients, probably the average age of our client is somewhere between 40 and 55 years of age. So we are, and clients stay with us. I mean, I was saying this to someone the other day, someone was asking me and they said, the average client stays with someone for about 3 to 4 years. I have called my 90-year-old client. I've been training him since 2002.
Wow.
I have numerous clients that I've had for well over 10 years, many for 15 years. And I take a lot of pride in that. For me, it's about, like you said, a community. We actually aren't a club in the sense of we're in Orangeville. No one else is in Orangeville. My clients aren't here. I have a few clients here in Orangeville, but the vast majority of my clients are around Ontario, around Canada. They've been in the US, they've been over in South Africa, they've been over in Europe. And so I really have had a diverse group of athletes, but we build this community. We get together for training camps and training days. And it's been really neat that community has really stayed strong.
Yeah, no kidding. And going into, I mean, you mentioned triathlon, and the vast majority of your clients are triathletes. So I want to spend some time just kind of trying to extract some value for people that are, trying to navigate fitness and triathlon in a COVID world, and hopefully soon a post-COVID world. But that said, for somebody starting out now, or kind of coming out of hibernation now, saying, okay, I'd like to do something this summer, without knowing that there are actually going to be any in-person events, like what advice are you giving people, or what tips or training are you offering to people?
Well, again, this conversation this is obviously the conversation we're having almost every day with our athletes as they're gearing up year 2 of this. Their races all got canceled last year, and what's going to happen this year. So the conversation is, and I think the word virtual is starting to wear off on people. I think it was novel at the beginning. Everyone was like, that's a neat idea. But now I think the word virtual is a little bit more challenging to sell to people. And I've been telling people that this is a great opportunity to really take that pride in, yes, still sign up for your race that you think might happen, but focus on you, focus on what you can accomplish. So we've been doing a lot of time trials. We've been doing a lot of, if it's on the run, we've started even at a mile at the track. We've done some 5Ks. We're building up to 10Ks. We have some people doing some half marathons, but by themselves. So not a virtual. They're not using that. They're not signing up for something necessarily. Some have, but that's part of their training and getting that satisfaction of doing it on their own. Because I've explained to them that if you learn to be tough enough to do it on your own to a really high level, that when the day comes that you can race again, it's going to feel so good. But then you're going to have this internal confidence that you may not have had before. And I think a lot of newer athletes, those that didn't necessarily grow up as athletes, that have become athletes later in life, they don't necessarily have that confidence. And I think this has been a great year for building that confidence where they don't have the stress of racing. And that hopefully that confidence is going to then translate over into race day.
Oh, interesting. And I guess you're kind of already set up for this, right? I mean, like with HR, I mean, like you've been online pretty much right since the beginning, right? Almost before the internet was the internet.
We were doing Excel files and email when we started. Yep.
Yeah. There you go. So I'd like to know your thoughts on, and I keep going back to the word tribe, because I mean, like when I say tribe, I mean, like it kind of reminds me of what you built there and so on and so forth. But it's also synonymous with the sport of triathlon, because you often see, small cohorts of people that they're getting together every Sunday to run, or they're running their bikes together, or showing up to the pool together. And it really is a tribe mentality. Why do you think that is with triathlon?
That's an interesting question. I think the world of triathlon, I think you'd find it in a lot of sports. I mean, I think of I think of swimming, I think of cycling, I think of running. Funny enough, they're clubs, right? And I think triathlon is not much different. I would say at the beginning, triathlon, when it was grassroots, wasn't that style. I mean, there was one coach in triathlon really in Ontario when we started. So you had to be with that coach if you want to really kind of get to the national team. But really everyone was just together. So like I hung out with all of my friends, whether they were from Leamington or whether they're from Kingston or whether they're from Barrie or Toronto. We all just hung out, we get together. We weren't on the same club. But then as the sport grew, and they're now in a town of Midland, 20,000 people, they grew a tri club to the size of 100 people, which is incredible. And so I think what's happened is, the draw to triathlon has really brought communities together. And then within that, they've started their learn to tries, and then their learn to tries become, let's do a sprint. And then their sprint becomes, let's do an Olympic. And then their Olympic becomes, let's do a half Ironman and a half Ironman. And all of a sudden you have this tiered effect. And just like with the marathon craze, you can still come in at a 5K, then do your 10, then do your half marathon, and then do your marathon. And I think what happens is that people they're gravitated to join in at the grassroots level, and then there's many, many steps to stay in it as they progress as athletes, which then brings that community together, because you have their more senior people as well as the more beginners.
Yeah, it certainly has evolved to become much more of a welcoming. Well, I don't know if it's evolved. Like it seems like it's always been there because of how it was initiated, in California, and this idea that just kind of grew and so on and so forth. And now you have the kids races, you have the age group races, and so on and so forth. And you have a place for everybody, is what it really seems like, right? So you touched on something there which made me just curious on when you started. Like you mentioned, like there were no books, there was there was no information. So back in '89, where did a training plan come from? How did you develop that information?
Great question. Well, I mean, aero bars, for example, had just been invented. So the local bike shop just happened to have a pair in. So my mom bought them. We had no idea how to use them. I would love to see a picture of me on that bike. Yeah, I was probably in the most Superman position ever. But we did it, we found a saddle that, would all of a sudden shove you way forward so I could get those aero bars more comfortable. So we're like, well, that seems like a good idea. So we'll do that. I mean, it was a lot of trial and error for sure. I mean, I learned that the body glove wetsuit was really not good for swimming in. And I learned that the hard way. So we were I joke all the time with my current clients, one of the things that I bring to the table, sure, I've got an exercise physiology background. I've got a psychology background. But the years of mistakes I've made is almost more valuable than all of that, because I've made them all, and truly all. So I think we learn by truly mistakes. We were the first people. There was you couldn't go to Slow Twitch and ask and get 40,000 people commenting in on what tire you should buy. There was one tire. Nutrition, there was Power Goo, or I guess Power Gel, lemon flavor. So if you didn't like it, oh well, you're out of luck. Back to bananas. Like, really, there wasn't much choice. So we just had to do what we had to do.
Yeah. And that really seems like that. I can understand why you have the base of knowledge that you do have, right? Because I mean, like, it's the, to use, a quote from Seth Godin, like, you learn by doing, right? So, what was it? Thomas Edison, I haven't got it wrong 1,000 times. I just haven't figured it out how to do it right 1,000 times, right? And I think that's the mentality.
Well, I think a conversation I just had yesterday with a client, actually, the athlete that is coming into it in this era, right? We have Garmin, we've got power meters on our shoes, we got power meters on our bikes, we have watches, when we're out swimming, that's tracking everything. And, you've all these people pushing off the wall, hitting their buttons on their watches. They need all this data. And then I'll have a client email me and say, was it good? And I go, what do you mean, is it good? Well, you look at the data. Was it good? And I'm like, well, what do you think? Well, I don't know. Is this data good? And so I explained to people, like, well, I said, how did it feel? Well, I don't know. What does the data tell you? And I explained to people, data is awesome, but it's something to use after the fact to correlate with how you felt. Because racing is not about the data. Racing is about learning about your body and pushing your body to your greatest ability of what you want to accomplish. We use the data to help you learn about that, but you have to understand those feelings. So you tell me that you were out for an easy run. You could talk. Great. We look at your data. We see what your power was. We see what your heart rate was. We see what your pace was. Fantastic. We correlate that with the experience you had. Versus the athletes, he says, they don't want to know how they were breathing or how they felt. They just want me to tell them, was the data good? Is that what I need to be doing? And so that's a real learning. That's a very different mentality to the athletes of old. The athletes of old never would have used that data to drive them. They would have used the data to sort of learn things about what they were doing. So it's almost backwards now, I feel. And people they see a number, they think, well, if that number is what I need to do, that's going to be good. And to hell or high water, they're going to hit that number. So I think the education has been a really big challenge for teaching people about the difference between data and their experiences they're having and enjoying their experiences they're having. Like, clients won't go out unless I tell them every last minute they're going to do for their workout. And they freak out when I say, go for an hour run. Well, what do you want me to do? Easy. Well, what do you mean by easy? What pace is that? Go easy. Then but just go easy. If you think you're not going easy, you're probably not. and they like that from a physiological perspective, that's everything, right? But they're not going to gain anything by me telling them, I want you to run at 5 minutes per kilometer pace, because I know that that's easy for them. But it might be like yesterday where it's 100 kilometer an hour winds, and that's not the right thing to do. So anyway, yeah, the difference between data and personal experiences has been a huge thing I deal with a lot of athletes with.
Yeah, it's interesting. And it seems, if I link it to what you've talked about before, it links back to the intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. I'm motivated to go for a run because it makes me feel good, or, there's an internal reward versus tell me what to do. What do I do? I'm going to do this because you've set this as, this target. So I've got to go do this.
Or the other thing I deal with all the time is that I have athletes that won't go easy in an interval workout. So they do their interval workout. So they're going a kilometer on 2 minutes easy. So after their kilometer run, they won't run easy. Why? Because they have to upload this onto Strava as well. And their friends are all going to see how fast they ran. And so if they run slow during the recovery, their average speed's going to be horrible. And I look at them like, are you serious? And yeah, but I'll catch a client all the time. Like, what were you doing? Like, you were basically running 30 seconds slower than your interval during your recovery phase. But they were like, well, I didn't want my average speed to be too low. And so the education part is good. Now, again, the clients I've had for 10 years, I don't have those conversations. Those are normally the first year people. They learn my ways very quickly.
It's interesting. So just a couple of points on that. So I have a friend out in Vancouver who runs the Acceleration Triathlon Club. It's primarily a youth club, deals primarily with kids and whatnot. And he had an interesting observation at the outset of COVID when they had to go with essentially all virtual training. Whereas in comparison to his colleagues, his athletes were having trouble not getting injured in a virtual world, whereas the other athletes were the rate of injury had decreased in a virtual world. And when he's a mechanical guy, he's an engineer, so he's very well thought out, very process oriented, and so on and so forth. Very creative guy as well, which is kind of makes him quite good at what he does. But what he noted was that and much like what you're talking about, like when his athletes would go out on a run, he'd say, you got to stay within these parameters because this is what we're trying to do today, right? Versus, a coach that might say, okay, no, just go, and we're going to push you hard. So there wasn't, there wasn't any control. And then as soon as you moved into a virtual world, the kids that were always kind of controlled, they struggle to really understand, where their limits were. And the kids that had previously had a higher rate of injury because they didn't have somebody pushing them, so hard and to the point of injury all the time, their injury rate decreased. So I guess it's more of a story than a question, but I'm curious if you have some feedback. And then the follow-up question to that is, based on what you said, do we have an information overload these days?
That is a good question. Well, to your first point, obviously my world's been virtual for 22 years. So I'm so used to dealing with and instructing and giving guidance almost in the way we're doing it right now. So through communication, my whole Monday is just communicating with my clients based on what I saw the week prior, giving them a full summary of all of the data and their comments, to then give them a summary of what happened and then give them the feedback of what we're doing this week. They get their programs delivered to them through Training Peaks, nowadays totally downloaded onto their watches, downloaded onto their computers. It's just crazy what's available now. Even in the last, I think almost year or 2 years, the amount of stuff we can have is incredible. But where I have seen a really big difference is obviously with my swim coaching. So, on top of Healthy Results, as you know, I coach 13 to 15-year-olds in swimming with the Orangeville Otters. And going from the pool where I see the kids every day for 2 hours to all of a sudden seeing them for an hour on Zoom, really difficult. The kids really struggled. Motivation to get out and do their own workouts on their own was very difficult. These are kids that would, kids in swimming, they don't know how to go easy. You tell them to dive in and warm up slowly and they're full throttle from the get-go. These kids had a real difficult time training hard on their own. They would say, I went for a bike ride with my friend. And I'm like, oh, great. And they're like, yeah, we took, an hour and a half to go and do, a 5K bike ride. And I'm like, yeah, we got some ice cream. And, I'm like, well, that's great. It's fantastic. You got some exercise, but it's a little different, 2 hours swim practice and, an hour and plus riding 5K. And so, yeah, it was challenging for them to really find that balance of they're so used to a coach standing on deck, giving them literally every minute, every second of that practice guidance, to then all of a sudden being by themselves and having to figure it out. Now, the real positive on that is a lot of the kids really grew as individuals. And I'm fortunate. I mean, I think that wouldn't have happened in 10, 11, and 12-year-olds. I think at the age group I had, we're at that point where they're just of age, where that maturity level was there to be able to grow. And it was neat to watch them grow. And so, yeah, so that was a great learning process for me, because I had never really coached young kids online before. I'd done it with adults tons, but to be doing, Zoom Core or Zoom Dryland with them, and it's different with an adult. You talk to them differently. You can expect different things. Their body control is different. They know the lingo maybe a little bit more, and so it was definitely making sure that I also have a fairly wide range of athletes, and so yeah, so it was a great experience and a good challenge.
Yeah, no kidding. Does that change anything for you in terms of your possible or potential client mix for Healthy Results?
I don't think so, because again, this whole year hasn't really changed anything for me with Healthy Results. Our biggest challenge, obviously, is we don't have as many people phoning because there's not as many races to be getting ready for. So inevitably, a new client will come along when they've signed up for that first big race. And then all of a sudden they go, oh my gosh, I need a coach. And so this is a year where, we definitely have noticed the phone or the emails are not coming in as much as we have seen in the past. And so, but those that have been with me forever, or even those that were here with me started last year, we've just been continuing on as if nothing's really changed. I mean, obviously, I'm so fortunate to have the swim background over the last 5 years that I wouldn't have had. So previously to that, I wasn't a swim coach. I was a triathlon coach. And, former Olympic swimmer Rob Taylor brought me in to the Orangeville Otters. I became part of that team. I consider myself as much a swim coach as I do consider myself a triathlon coach now, equally. And really my confidence in the world of swimming has skyrocketed being beside him, and training with some of the best kids in the province, some of the best kids in Canada. And so it has been a great learning experience that where that helps me with triathlon is all these swimmers have been out of the pool now for some of them since lockdown last year. They never went back to the pool because they didn't feel they couldn't get in. The 45-minute window didn't fit with their schedules, whatever. And I've taken a few clients back in and I've built sort of a protocol to getting them back to swimming. And we've had people back in 6 weeks because they're so fit from their running and biking. And a lot of these adults, as you know, as a swim coach, their problem is not their fitness. Their problem is their technique. And so being able to build them back up to get them back swimming technically and then start to build a little bit of volume, I've got them back to racing almost full speed within 6 weeks, which has been awesome. So the confidence of saying, look, guys, don't stress about the pool. When we are 12 weeks out from your competition, we'll make a call of whether we need to start fighting for those lane spaces at pool time. And for a lot of them, obviously now we all know August is going to be the first races that we really see. And so most people can just wait until open water season.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Talk to me about your plans for the summer. I saw that you have you're organizing or you have launched a camp, local camp, and potentially one overseas as well, or...
So we put a hold on our race to Hawaii. So our Hawaii one is now not being pushed to 2022. Okay. We are going to be organizing in July a training day we're going to start with here in Hockley, which is just north of Toronto for those that don't know where Orangeville is. But Hockley Valley, if you look up Hockley Valley Resorts, that's the area. And yeah, our goal is we are waiting for public health. We're waiting to sort of see where things, obviously this will constantly be changing, whether we are in gray, red, orange, whatever color we're in, of what we can do. So we've got a plan. We're going to start with a day. If all of a sudden, the miracle happens and we're allowed to do more, we'll grow from that. We're also planning a ton of swim clinics. Again, waiting to launch those once we know whether we're going back to red or not. We're going to move forward with that. And then we're back to Vegas next year for sure. That's the one thing that this layoff has been for everyone. They've all realized, right now is when we normally be in Las Vegas for our training camp. For many people, they think of Las Vegas as the Strip, which is funny. I've been there for the last 10 years. And yes, I spend my token day on the Strip every year. But we actually train about 20 minutes off the Strip in Lake Mead National Park. And it is hands down some of the best open water swimming you'll ever find. The best bike ride I've found everywhere. Like, I've been down to Tucson, I've been in Phoenix, I've been out to California. This is some of the best pavement, some of the best beautiful terrain. And literally we have one route that's 200K and people can ride any length of that 200K route, but because we have full support, but the road is beautiful and you might have 7 cars go by you. It's an absolutely amazing place to go for a week. So we'll be back there in 2022 in the spring. Lots planned, a little bit planned for the summer, but a lot planned for 2022.
Yeah, fair enough. And is that seems to be a key way that you bring your community, your tribe together?
Absolutely. Yeah. We try to always have our spring camp as our pinnacle camp. We've been doing it now. I started in 2000. And so, it's been a huge part of our community getting together each year. People look forward to it. I have people that have been coming for many, many, many years. And it's just a fun week, because I think one of the things I can say about Healthy Results is that we don't have egos. I think my personality doesn't draw to the person that has a huge ego. So our club is very open to new people. It's not a clique, which is really, really neat. It's what I feel so special about it, that we can get people together, maybe because they're not all from the exact same community, and we can have a lot of fun together as a group.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, I want to really thank you for your time today. You've shared a lot. Hopefully that, people are going to pick this up and find out what you do. And hopefully this helps you, this helps them. The goal of this is just to try to create value for the community and bring everybody together. So thank you very, very much for your time today. Any last words that you'd like to leave the listeners?
Well, I think athletes out there, I think the key thing is really sit down and look and, ask yourself, if there was no race, what do you want to accomplish? And I really think that if you really think about what you want out of yourself, like, I'll give my own personal experience. I'm training for an ultra run, and I'm actually training for a 100-mile run right now. But I know there's a good chance the race won't happen, but I have goals that on that weekend, one way or another, I will be running 100 miles. But that isn't the reason why I'm doing it, not just it. For me, it's that challenge of testing my body. I actually don't know if my body can actually go and push myself the way I want to push it for 100 miles. Yes, I know I could walk the final bits in, but that's not what I want to do. So I want that goal. I want that challenge to push myself. I challenge athletes to sit back and go, whether you're a swimmer, biker, runner, triathlete, is what do you want to accomplish that you haven't done? Like, what do you want to try? These are the years, or this is the year to try something new. Maybe it's about putting in more mileage than you've ever done before on the bike. Maybe it's a year where you're going to try doing some time trials and really going hard, because you don't have to race every other weekend that you normally would be doing. I think that's what we've learned, is that because we don't have races, we can do a lot of things we would normally avoid because we're too worried about that race coming up. So it's a great year to experiment and learn about yourself.
Fantastic. Well, I would love to do a check-in with you after your 100-mile run, see how that journey went, because I'm sure that there's going to be lots to share and lots that you've learned through that process. So again, thank you very much. All the best with the summer and the swim club, and thanks for your time.
Hey, Jason, thanks for having me.
My pleasure.
At the starting line. engines pumping and thumping inside.
Hey, if you like that, head over to YouTube and check out the Ocean Junction channel. Make sure to like and subscribe for more great videos featuring amazing speakers. Thanks for watching.